Okay, in this lecture we're going to talk about another method by which we factor polynomials. It's called factoring by grouping. So we're going to group together pairs of terms and factor those and see if we can head towards completely factoring the expression. So the best way to show this is to use an example. Right, factor by grouping. Okay, part A. Right, let's suppose we have x squared y plus 3x squared minus 5y minus 15. Okay, we start looking for factors, and in all of these, notice there's no factor that is a factor of every term. So let's look at pairs of terms. For example, in these first two terms we have an x squared. So what happens if we factor that? Well, we end up with x squared by y plus 3. Notice that we do have a negative 5 as a factor here. So if I took out a negative 5, I'd get y plus 3 as well. Notice negative 5 by plus 3 is negative 15. Notice that we now have a y plus 3 as a factor in these two terms, and that will leave me with x squared minus 5. And this will be our factored form. Right, part B. Let's suppose I have 4 a squared minus a squared b plus 4b minus b squared. Okay, so we start looking for factors in here. Notice we have an a squared here and an a squared here. We also have a b and a b squared here. So what happens if I take out an a squared? I end up with a 4 minus b. What happens if I take out now a b here? I'd get a 4 minus b. And of course we have a 4 minus b as a common factor, and that leaves me a squared plus b. And so there's our our factored form for that one. Right, part C. Right, let's suppose that we have 9 m cubed minus 15 m squared plus 6m minus 10. So in this case here, what happens? All right, well, we have in these two terms we have an m squared. We also have a 3. So when we do that, we'll get a 3m here. That gives me 9m cubed minus 5 plus, now in here we have a 2 and we have a 3m minus 5. So in other words, we have a 3m minus 5 and we'll have an 3m squared plus 2, and that will be my result. Alright, so notice that we've taken pairs of factors. So we take this one here and we've shown that it's equal first of all to this factored form. That gets us down to this one. Notice in this case here we factor these two terms, and then of course we get it down to factoring these two terms, so it's a double process. And finally we did it the same here, even though we had one variable. Now you can check these by multiplying as well. Okay. Alright, now we're going to also now look at, well, how do we actually now factor a trinomial? Now, trinomial, of course, you remember, is a polynomial with 3 terms. Alright, now there's a couple of ways we can do this. Alright, and often it's called the AC method. So for example, let's suppose I want to factor 5x squared plus 4x minus 12. Okay. Alright, so there's a couple of things to keep in mind here. Remember that if we're to get this thing factored, then it would have been had to be FOILed. So we would have had something like, say, ax plus b by, say, cx plus d. And when we FOILed this, what would happen? Well, we'd get ac x squared plus a d x plus bc x plus bd, and we'd end up here with ac x squared plus ad plus bc x plus bd. Okay. All right, now if we were to match up these polynomials, you'll notice that AC, all right, must be equal to, notice that this is equal to 5, okay? And what else would we need? We would need BD would equal negative 12, and AD plus BC would be equal to 4, okay? All right, so the easiest way to think about this is to look at the factors here. All right, notice that we're adding these two factors, which is 4. Okay, and we're going to have to use AC and BD. Okay, now what are the possibilities for this? Well, the way I think about doing this is to multiply the 5 and the negative 12 to give me negative 60. So what this is really boiling down to is I want the factors of negative 60, which are going to add up to 4. Okay. All right. So what are these going to be? So what numbers add up to 60? All right, so let's have a look and see. Suppose we have, well, negative 1 and 60. That doesn't work. Negative 2 and 30. Negative 3 and 20. Negative 4 and 15. Negative 5 and 12. Okay, and of course we'd have negative 60 or 1 and so forth as well. Negative 5 and 12, negative 6 and 10. Oh, hello, negative 6 and 10. Notice this one. Okay, adds up to 4. So what I do here then is say, well, I have 5x squared, and I use my grouping method. Instead of putting 4 here, I'm going to put 10x minus 6x minus 12. All right, and so this is going to be equal to 5x, and I take out, use my grouping method, and I get x plus 2. Here I have a negative 6, and I have an x plus 2. And so I end up with x plus 2 by 5x takes 6. Okay? Alright, so basically that's how we go about doing it. We actually turn it into a grouping problem. Okay? And the simplest way to do that, alright, based on the idea of the reverse FOIL, is to look at the factors of A times C. Alright, so notice that here we have 5 times 12. If this was in the form AX squared plus BX plus C, right, then A times C would be negative 60. So here's my factors of negative 60, and they've got to add up to this middle term, okay, which is 4. Okay, and so consequently I work my way through what the factors of negative 60 are, get the two of them, replace the middle term, which of course was 4x, with these two factors of x, and then use grouping. Okay,